Hello everyone and welcome to this video where I'm actually going to discuss something that I can't believe I figured out so late in the game. Maybe it'll come as a surprise to some of you, and maybe some of you will roll your eyes and think, I already knew that. But we're going to talk about it regardless, because I believe with creations, especially smaller creations, this knowledge will help you immensely. So follow along as we begin. So, what we're going to discuss is the piping system. So you do see this nice plane, but we're not going to talk about the plane, we're going to talk about the little generator in the back of the plane. Because this is what I call a micro build. And similar to Lego, when you build small scale things, this is also a small scale build, but useful in Stormworks. So, as you can see here, the big plane doesn't necessarily get affected by this information so much, but something the size of this generator certainly will. And that's the piping system. So, the piping system is how you control your air, your exhaust, your RPMs, and coolant. So, one engine has all these different fluids running through it, and, energy. So fluids is gas and liquids in the case of the coolant, in the case of the exhaust, and in the case of the air intake, and then also RPMs. So funny enough, you have RPMs using the same thing, or rather the same means of putting the RPMs, or rather the drive shaft power to the wheels. It uses the pipes. So the way that I understood this game when I first started is that you have individual systems for the piping, and you'd have your different fluid ports. So you'd have your air intake, you'd have your exhaust. I missed fuel. I said earlier there was 4, there's actually 5. So we have our fuel, the coolant is the next one. So you do this, and now you put your radiator. That's 4, exhaust, fuel, air, and coolant. And then your RPS, which uses the same pipes. So in a real vehicle, first of all, obviously all these are isolated systems, and second of all, your drive shaft usually comes straight out of your engine. In my opinion, the drive shaft of the game should have been its own type of piping. Maybe you could use these pipes for these systems here, but the drive shaft would be maybe just be a pipe that looks different. Let's call it our rocket fuel or whatever. And it would simply be like this, and that's your now your drive shaft. But no, the game uses the same fluid transportation method, which is the pipe, for the RPS. Okay, I always kept the systems isolated since the beginning. Since I started this game, every system is isolated. But then I started building small things, or more condensed things, and all of a sudden, it wasn't enough that I had my engine have different independent systems, or independent fluid transportation systems. So I then had to do my best to work around keeping these systems isolated. And it wasn't until I built that generator and this rat side by side that I discovered, in order to keep a design compacted, you can actually mix the different types of fluids and RPS in the systems. Now, if that doesn't make sense, I'm going to show you here. So, you have this engine here producing fuel, or taking fuel, and it goes directly to the fuel tank. But you can actually have it merge with the RPS, or rather the drive shaft. And likewise, you can play around and have your actual fluids mixing together, but be very cautious, because I actually had people reporting that this side by side was overheating, because at first I had the exhaust mix in with the air intake, and it was, the exhaust mixed in with the gas tank, the gas line, and it was causing an issue. And so now I have these independent systems, but I had it mixed, and actually what happened was my gas tank would empty of gas and fill with exhaust fluid until And funny enough, my gas dial would never go down. It'd always read 100%. It's always full because as the diesel leaves, exhaust fills. So you got to be cautious with how you do this, because certain things you can't mix. So fluid, like the fluids, you have the exhaust and gas line. That's a no-no. But you can mix your drive shaft and your exhaust, for example. So you actually could have the pipes come down like this and mix in with a T-junction. And just like that. Let's give it a shot. So now we have our RPS actually mixing with your exhaust. And I'll show you how that works. And here you got it. So exhaust is coming out and the vehicle is obviously moving, so the RPS is going through the system. But be warned, you cannot transfer RPS through a catalytic converter, for example. So if we actually move this out by 1, like this, and then move our catalytic converter to here, and then just put a regular old pipe here. So now, in theory, our RPS has to go through that catalytic converter. So something goes through, but it's heavily reduced, and it's not functioning properly. So in this case, you're not getting a proper transfer of your power to your wheels because it's going through that catalytic converter. In other cases, if you did another mix like a fuel line or something, you wouldn't get anything. So be cautious if you are crossing paths, because something like this will mess up your creation. And I know it's bad to promote the use of the depreciated fluid filter, but in that case you could actually use the fluid filter to say, you know, only let exhaust through or whatever. But the problem with that is then you're no longer having a micro build. If you're trying to keep the square footage of your engine down, and even in a truck, like, it's not too bad, but I'd say the generator is the worst part. If it's a big ship, you don't care. You have tons of space. You don't have to have anything mixed. But for small creations, jet skis are a good example, like Sea-Doos, stuff like that. You want to reduce their size, so it is good to have a mix. Now, this vehicle, the Bull Ride, is where I've actually used that. So here you can see the exhaust passes through your drive shaft. And actually, I stand corrected. It wasn't the catalytic converter that I had the power not going through, but it was actually the clutch or the gears. So your exhaust, if you're trying to put exhaust through a clutch or through gears, it will not work. So you can't have it join. I think originally I had the system join here, and my idea was that the exhaust would join here, go through the drive shaft, and then come out back here. Nope, that didn't work. It didn't want to go through the gears or the clutch. So different things can or can't go through different mediums, obviously. Like, you have entirely different systems, like I said. So ideally they're closed, but in the case of small builds where your design is so compacted, it is nice to be able to play with that and have things kind of go through. So you can do that. I'd recommend testing it out thoroughly. Maybe you can mix the air and the exhaust. I'm not quite sure. I think actually no, because you drown your engine. Logically, if you put exhaust into the engine, you drown it. So you have to play around, but RPS is probably a safe bet to pass through any one of the fluids. By fluids, I mean the diesel, or jet fuel, so the actual fuel, or the air or the exhaust, and even the coolant. You can pass those through your RPS, no problem. For the others, play it by ear, risk it, and then test it. Let me know in the comments, obviously, but I did find that this was groundbreaking for me, because I never thought about even trying to mix the systems. And then one time I did, and it opened my eyes, and I'm like, wow. So I wanted to get this out to you guys. I want to make sure that when you guys make your small creations like this, that you're able to have the engine bay that you desire and not just be limited to, you know, having to increase the size of your creation just to satisfy the constraints. You can actually play with them and have your vehicle actually, you know, reduced in size and hopefully more optimized. That's always the key. I love to optimize things and make them the most efficient way they can possibly be, and in terms of size and in terms of space. So hopefully you learned something. If not, hopefully you were entertained as always. Stay tuned for the next announcements, the new creations, new videos, all that good stuff. Join my Discord, comment, like on the video, all that good stuff. And as always, enjoy your Stormworks session. So what I'm going to say is happy Stormworksing, everyone.